Anthony Kiedis, the lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, has left an incredible mark on the music world. With his distinctive voice, poetic lyrics, and great stage presence, Kiedis has won over audiences for over 3 decades. But the road to success was not without its challenges and personal struggles. In this video, we'll take a look through the life and traumas of Anthony Kiedis, exploring the abuse that shaped his life and how it manifested into his adulthood. Kiedis was born 1962 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. His early life was characterized by unconventional experiences and a sense of transience. At the age of 12, he moved to Los Angeles to live with his father, John Michael Kiedis, who was involved in the drug trade and had ties to the Hollywood counterculture at the time. Exposure to this fast-paced, hedonistic lifestyle would later influence his music and personal life in profound ways. Anthony Kiedis' father, John Michael Kiedis, also known as Blackie Dammit, was a very troublesome individual. When Anthony was 3 years old, his parents divorced and he was raised by his mother in Grand Rapids. His mother remarried later on and had 2 children with Anthony's stepfather. However, Anthony only saw his dad for 2 weeks every year when he would go out to visit him in Hollywood every summer. Those trips to California were the happiest, most carefree, the world is a beautiful oyster times I'd ever experienced, Anthony recalls. However, his dad was a drug dealer, which Anthony picked up on at an early age. Anthony allegedly accidentally tried heroin for the first time at age 14, mistaking it for cocaine. His father earned a living by getting small roles in Hollywood films. Here's his dad talking about encouraging Anthony to take drugs when he was just a teen. I'm just going to let this video play itself and I'm not going to interrupt, and I think you'll realize why, so enjoy.
I think it was a great thing for him, the way that he grew up. He got the traditional Midwestern upbringing, all no nonsense, that kind of stuff, and out with me, a wild maniac who wasn't afraid to take him anywhere, do anything. Our relationship, we were best friends. We were father and son. We were partners in crime. We were the perfect couple and very much in love with each other. Everything I wore, I would make an outfit for him, a little baby size outfit of that. When I was wearing pinstripe suits, we would get custom made pinstripe suits for him. So when we would go out at night, we'd be like twins. We'd always dress the same way. We'd go to the nightclubs and my table, yes sir, there we go. We started experimenting. He had been out there for a while and he was curious. I mean, obviously he knew that I was doing drugs because everybody was doing drugs in the circles that I lived in. And I had parties at my house constantly with, you know, movie stars and big rock stars and sports stars. And people weren't embarrassed to be doing drugs at that time. It was just acceptable. So he was curious. He wanted to know about them. I let him experiment. Everybody's on acid and running around and dancing and stuff. It wasn't so unusual that I let him have a little bit of acid or take a little bit of marijuana or something like that. So, and at the time, it wasn't a big deal. I grew up in the age when you would like be interested in girls enough to want to have sex with them. For me, the early 50s, girls didn't have sex with you. So I wanted Anthony to be able to enjoy sex from an early age. So when I had so many girlfriends, most of them were young, and when he was, whatever he was, 12 or 13 or something, these girls weren't that much older than he was because I dated such young girls. So this girl, Kimberly, a very beautiful girl I knew from the Rainbow Bar and Grill, certainly the kind of girl that would be nice to have with the first time. So she agreed, and they had sex. And he was quite young, younger than you would expect a kid to be. I knew that I wanted him to be able to be the first guy in his class instead of the last, like I was. What? To have sex with girls. And it did make him a big hit at school. It was, what? You had sex? I'm not going to have sex for like 6 more years, you lucky guy. That's just the way I treated Anthony. Now, obviously, most people are going to think I'm a sicko nutcase, but how much bad comes from it? It didn't hurt him. He enjoyed it. It didn't hurt her. She enjoyed.
This should be called Help, My Dad is Blackie Dammit. Pretty sure this guy admitted to at least 3 felonies here. So this video obviously is just insane, right? And that's why I didn't interrupt it, because he first of all admits to giving his teenage son drugs, like hard drugs. He doesn't mention the heroin or cocaine that Anthony was doing as a kid either. But he also admits to making Anthony have sex as a kid, and then he makes up this hypothetical scenario where the kids in school think that Anthony is so cool because they're not going to have sex for another 6 years. Now, I'm pretty sure the average age of losing your virginity in America is like 16. So was Anthony 10 years old when this happened? And how old was the girl that was not much older than Anthony, who apparently this guy knew would be willing to have sex with Anthony? I mean, it just gets crazier and crazier. Anthony would then grow into an adult struggling with drug addiction for decades. A few years into the Red Hot Chili Peppers, his drug use got so bad that once he was replaced with singer Keith Morris.
Busted jaywalking. That's the story that we tell everybody. But Anthony would eventually step up and say, "No, I was fucking in a knot on my drug dealer's couch." This is like 3 hours before the biggest show they're ever going to play. This was at the Olympic Auditorium. There were going to be like 4,000 people at this show.
When the then guitarist of the band, Hillel Slovak, died of a heroin overdose at only 26 years old in 1988, Anthony said he would never use heroin again. He went to rehab but stayed sober for only 5 years and started to use again in 1994, which caused a delay in the release of the album One Hot Minute by around a year.
My creativity was dying when I was using drugs. It was sapping all of my creativity because, well, for a lot of reasons, but basically what I'm trying to say is I became much more creative when I stopped, and I'm continuing to become more so all the time, the longer I'm clean.
Have you been on heroin?
When?
During the last year.
During the last year, I am sad to say that I have used this narcotic substance, which you previously mentioned in this interview. Yes.
And how did that happen, and how did that affect your ability to work?
Well, basically, you know, when I use drugs, my life kind of falls apart and gets really uncomfortable and sad, and I start hurting myself and everyone around me. And then, you know, when I have the good fortune to get off of them, everything gets better. Good friendships and good relationships with my mom and dad, and I make good music and, you know, look at the sky and go, oh yeah, it's a beautiful day. So in a nutshell, when I'm using, my life sucks, and then when I'm clean, my life gets really beautiful. So when I was using, things got really ugly. And
how did you get on the road, the drug road?
Well, I think the road was already in me from birth. It was just like, in the end, this is a life of suffering.
What was the narcotic of choice?
The combination of heroin and cocaine was...
Do you remember what you started with?
The cocaine shortly before the heroin, but right around the same time, very young age.
And did you do it because it was the thing that people around you did?
Notice how Anthony doesn't mention his father here at all.
Was it just exciting? Was it rebellious? Like, what was it? Was it a part of rock and roll?
It had nothing to do with rock and roll or trying to impress or put on a pretense. It was happening around me in my world. It was exciting and dangerous. You know, it's like you steal from Peter, you got to pay Paul the next day, and it's a terrible paycheck to write.
How'd you get sober the first time?
So in a way, my best friend died, which did not instigate sobriety.
Did he die from drugs?
He did. But it definitely destroyed me emotionally. But I continued to use after he died. I gave my last 10 grand, my only 10 grand ever, to a rehab, and I went and I checked in. And the counselor said, I'm looking at 30 of you. Stats-wise, one of you is going to get sober out of here.
Wow.
And I was like, get out the way, because I'm taking that spot. I am taking that.
Right.
Please, you know, the rest of you can go back to where you came from.
Only 1 out of 30.
That's what he said to us.
In this next clip, Anthony's father literally breaks down crying just at the thought of giving Anthony a normal childhood, a normal, boring childhood.
I never saw drugs as a really terrible thing, and I've never been addicted. I spent a good deal of my life never going to rehabs myself. I've never been in anything like that. I've never been addicted, but I've spent a lot of my life with Anthony in rehab places because he's been in a lot of them. And there were a lot of times when he was really, really bad shape. Now, everybody knows that rock and roll people go through this, and there have been thousands that have gone through the same thing. But when it's your own son, it was life and death. There were times when, and this was after they signed their contracts and they finally had money, when he was actually could afford all these drugs, that he would just go off on binges and, be gone for weeks, and the accountants would have to cut off his credit cards and things, and then he would just be roaming the streets and sleeping in alleys and stuff like that. So yes, it got terrible. And I would give him lectures and try and explain to him, but of course, I can see why he would say, well, you're a fine one to talk. You did a lot of drugs. Now it's my turn to do a lot of drugs. But as far as Anthony, I'd say he came about as close as possible as he could to dying.
Did you feel guilty at the time?
Did I feel guilty? Well, yes, I would feel guilty. Guilty that, but it's not so much guilty as feeling bad.
Did he blame you then?
Well, I didn't think he did, but when I realized he blamed me to some extent when we started going to these rehab things. And everybody sits around in a circle, and then the two combatants, the drug addict and the parent, sit in chairs facing each other in the middle and tell the other one what they really think and what's been bugging them their whole life. And that's when I first started finding out that he was bitter about a lot of things. It's terrible. You first of all, you look at yourself and say, maybe I did make a mistake. Maybe I shouldn't have done this. And also you feel anger because a lot of it wasn't you. A lot of it came from, like I say, that your peers and other people that you were involved in. Why should it be all my fault all of a sudden? And for a long time, though, I think he harbored those feelings. A lot of people castigated me for my behavior, but all I can say is, look how we turned out. I had a game plan, and I think it worked. And so many people think I was wrong to do what I did. But to me, what would have been wrong is to let him live in the Midwest, grow up, work as an insurance salesman. That would have been a shame. For that, I would be sorry. But not for what I did. There was this long, long period where I was Blackie Dammit and Anthony was Blackie Dammit's kid. And then it came to the point where I'm Anthony Kiedis' son. Father. There's a time where he became the dad in a way. And then he is now. He's bought me 2 houses now, big, expensive houses, not just little old houses, and, big cars for Christmas, and Andy Warhol paintings, and, he's spent a lot of money on me. He couldn't be any better. He's my hero.
Is he the main relationship in your life?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I can't talk right now. Because all the women in my life have been transitional and ephemeral. You fall in love, and you fall out of love. You never fall out of love with your son. And obviously, I never will. And I'm sure he feels the same way.
Unfortunately, the cycle of Anthony's abuse was not limited to drugs. In 1990, Anthony was convicted in a Virginia circuit court of sexual battery and indecent exposure, after he exposed himself during a show and put his private parts in a woman's face. He was fined $1,000 for each charge and almost spent 60 days in jail. 4 days later, the US government ordered that an AIDS info ad featuring Anthony was pulled, because of this incident. The year after the trial, Anthony featured in this interview with Flea, where many viewers thought he crossed the line.
Back off, baby.
I'm just getting the little kiss. The kiss besides.
Oh, God.
All right, this is a little kiss.
You know, people are watching this. You're making me blush.
You're making me blush. You're not blushing. You're making Flea blush.
You know,
I'm blushing.
Do you know how many letters I'm going to get because people are going to yell at me that I insisted that you kissed me? Do you know
She
how
told
it
me
gets?
before the interview if I didn't kiss her that she would not come to see us play tonight. So
Now moving on to the worst part. In 2005, the autobiography Scar Tissue was released by Anthony. In this book, Anthony makes a shocking admission. The next day we drove to Baton Rouge, and of course she came with us. After we got off stage, she came up to me and said, "I have something to tell you. My father's the chief of police and the entire state of Louisiana is looking for me because I've gone missing. Oh, and besides that, I'm only 14. I wasn't incredibly scared because in my somewhat deluded mind, I knew that if she told the chief of police she was in love with me, he wasn't going to have me taken out to a field and shot. But I did want to get her the hell back home right away. So we had one more time." Right here, Anthony admits to sleeping with a girl he knew to be 14, not once but twice. He was 23 years old at the time. Since the book was released, Anthony has regularly been seen dating legal women who are much younger than him. This is fine in terms of the law, but many find it creepy. It's very strange to me how such a famous musician can admit to something so illegal and horrible in his own book and not face any consequences whatsoever. I hope this video helped you to understand Anthony a little bit more, for better or for worse. No matter how successful you are or how talented or good looking, nobody is immune to the cycle of abuse, and Anthony serves as a good example for that. Thank you for watching.